Often named as one of the most critical elements of the entire service motion, as well as one of the most difficult to master. This element of the serve has been the most mythologized, the most mysterious part of your entire motion that is going to affect the timing of your swing, the perfection of your contact point, and the prowess of your confidence. And yes, of course, I'm talking about the serve toss. By the end of this video, you're gonna understand exactly where you should be tossing the ball based on our 3 dimensions that we've defined in the arc, the depth, and the height. You're gonna learn exactly where you should start hitting the ball. Is it at the apex, or should I let it drop, or should I hit it while it's rising? You're gonna learn whether it should be arcing to the right or to the left or just straight up and down. And you're gonna learn the number 1 important goal of the toss so that you can toss exactly where you need to each time. By the way, our YouTube analytics showed that about 70% of you guys actually aren't subscribed. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button below, hit the bell notification icon, and make sure so that you can stay tuned for our weekly brand new videos that we come out with. We're gonna be launching a bunch of serve content, so I definitely want you guys to tune in. So without further ado, I'm excited to get into the video. I'll see you inside. In order to master your serve toss location, we first have to look at the toss height. Now, a lot of players, when they're starting out, they believe that the toss height is going to land somewhere around the apex. The apex is basically where the ball, you toss the ball up, right? And it's rising up. As it rises up, it reaches its highest point before it decelerates and then changes direction and goes straight down. Now, on first glance, this makes sense to try and serve the ball at the apex because, well, first of all, if the ball is rising and then falling, there's a little bit of a time right there where the velocity is at 0. And maybe that might seem like the easiest time to go ahead and swing at the ball because it's virtually not moving at all. But most players on the Pro Tour are tossing the ball 1 feet, sometimes even 2 feet higher than their contact point. What happens is that when you toss and try and make contact at your apex, in order to do so, you're going to end up tossing lower, hence making you rush for a shot. And maybe you've felt this before. Maybe you've tried to toss the ball and then you feel rushed and you end up sacrificing any bit of racket speed generation just so that you can, reach that contact spot. And it's not a good look. So if you take this approach instead, you're going to be able to achieve the key specific spots in your acceleration to get that fluid, effortless, perfect contact spot. Now, the exact height that you're going to toss varies amongst how big your windup is going to be. If you take a look at players like Roddick or even Kyrgios, you'll see that their toss is only a couple of inches higher than their contact, specifically because of how fast they get in and out of that windup phase. But if you take a look at somebody like Federer, who has a larger windup, you'll see that he tosses somewhere between 1 and 2 feet above his contact. But the main commonality here is that it's well above the contact, giving them enough space to be able to swing up and out on the ball, as Dmitry discussed. So we covered what the optimal height is. Now we're gonna talk about how deep, how far into the baseline should I be tossing? Now, most of us players will probably land somewhere between tossing too far out onto the court and too far behind. Now, I'll talk about the problems with both of these, but I want to start out saying that if you heard the common teaching method of tossing the ball and having it land somewhere on your head, then you're probably going to find that 2 things are wrong here. Number 1, the specific contact position is going to make it so that you're not really in that optimal position that Dmitry discussed in the serve contact series, where you want your racket head to be aligned with the front edge of your torso at contact, and also you want to have a little bit of hip flexion to get that forward tilt, to get the center of mass of your upper body going into the court. So in order to really allow your body to get into that position, we really need to get the toss right for this. So let's again take a look at the most elite top servers in the game and take a look at how far into the court that they're tossing. You'll notice that a lot of players are going to toss several feet into the court so that they can really optimize for exactly what I was just saying, that contact point, getting well in front of their body and really being able to transfer their momentum really well into the shot. And even in some extreme cases, you'll see players like John Isner toss 4 feet into the baseline, and that's probably, you know, one of the contributors to his crazy ace count, other than his height, of course. Now, that doesn't mean that I want all of you to start tossing, you know, 4 or 5 feet out into the court, because what'll probably happen in that case is first of all, you'll either start hitting it into the net, because now if you're tossing too far out into the court, the contact is going to make it a lot more closed of a plane, and second of all, to compensate, you're probably going to start pushing and doing a variation of the waiter's tray. So starting out, I really want you to experiment with somewhere between a couple of inches, maybe 5 to 10 inches to even a foot in front of the baseline, and then start experimenting once you've gotten the timing and gotten a lot more comfortable with getting that forward trunk tilt. Now, if you really want to take this a step further, I want you to keep both of your feet planted on the ground instead of trying to launch each time. And in this case, what it's going to allow you to do is optimize for that contact point, isolating the upper body segments. And then, you know, obviously once you get your toss down, once you get the forward trunk tilt a lot more comfortable in your stance, then you can start to progress to using more and more leg drive until you're eventually off the ground. So we've got the height, we've got the depth. So that's pretty much all there is to a perfect toss, right? Well, not quite. So we still need to cover one more thing, and that's going to be the toss arc. Now, this is arguably the most critical dimension of the serve, because it's going to affect how tilted you are with your contact point, and that's going to affect your spin as well as your power. Now, one common teaching principle has been spread around, and that's basically where you want to toss up straight and straight down and make contact to your right. But there's a critical error here that's going to jeopardize your contact. And it has to do with how vertical your racket plane is on contact. You see, if the racket head is straight up and down, then that's going to extremely limit and jeopardize the amount of topspin that you can create on your shot. Because the leftward component of how your contact is oriented is going to affect how much topspin you get. So if you're hitting the ball with the racket straight up and down, you're not going to get a lot of topspin unless you're doing this motion like a Viking rally cry or something. And if you take a look at a lot of WTA servers, you'll probably see this, where their racket head is straight up, they're turned all the way in, and you probably can still hit 100+ miles per hour with this serve, but topspin again is very limited, so it's going to lead to a very flat and inconsistent shot. Now, most elite ATP servers, well, at least with the exception of a few serving giants who might as well be serving from the service line, are going to have their racket, their contact point, align with sometimes their head or with their hitting shoulder. If you take a look at Sampras, you'll see that his contact point is aligned with his head, and that's one of the biggest contributors to how he's able to get upwards of 2,000 to 2,500 RPM on his flat and kick serve. And then you'll see players like Federer who are more aligned with the hitting shoulder, which really allows you to drive that racket forward through that long axis rotation, the internal rotation of your forearm and your shoulder. So in order to replicate this, whenever you're tossing the ball from the point of your release, I want you to think the ball is going to travel about 2 feet to the non-dominant side, the left side if you're a righty, so that you can really get that tilt with your contact and therefore get that racket to drive forward and outward. Alrighty, so now that we broke down the dimensions of the perfect toss, the height, the depth, the arc, now we're going to cover the differences between the spin variations and how they affect the serve toss. So starting off with the flat versus the slice serve. Now, a lot of us probably, when we're starting out learning the slice serve or even continuing to play, we're gonna hit the slice serve by trying to carve it. And you've probably seen a lot of players and sometimes even coaches advocate that you wanna toss the ball further to your right to hit a really good slice serve. And there is some logic behind that, but if you want any power behind that slice serve, you're gonna want to toss a little bit more to the left. Because, as always, a few problems arise with tossing the ball too far to the right. Number one, it's gonna be virtually impossible to get any of that internal rotation that's gonna drive the racket forward. So even if you are able to carve the ball, if you're playing a righty, you're just gonna be carving it with a weak shot straight into their strike zone on the forehand, allowing them to tee up on the serve. So in order to avoid that, we still want to get that internal rotation and still get the side spin that we need to. Along with this, if we toss too far to the right, we're sacrificing one of the most critical objectives in the toss, which is making it unpredictable. You see, when I'm serving the ball and my opponent's watching me serve, and they can see exactly how I'm tossing the ball based on if I'm hitting a slice or a flat serve, well, I'm basically showing my cards. I might as well just say, hey, you know what? I'm going wide this time. I'm hitting a slice serve, right? So the objective here is to make sure that I have a serve that I can rely on, but my opponent can't rely on. Does that make sense? So to keep your disguise intact for the slice serve, instead of trying to focus on tossing far to the right, I want you instead to focus on when you go into the acceleration phase, just delay the amount of internal rotation you have and just think of it as you're hitting on edge more with the slice serve. And if you want a dedicated video to the slice serve mechanics, then if this video gets 1,000 likes, then we'll make a video on that. All right, and if you keep working on those drills, you're gonna start to see all of the shots starting to make it on a dime, and you're gonna increase your confidence on both your slice serve and your flat serve when you're going for that down the tee winner. Now my goal is to transfer that same confidence onto your kick serve. And I always tell my students this, but my goal is to get you a kick serve that your opponents are so afraid of, they wish you'd just hit the first serve in. Now, the biggest difference with the kick serve is going to be that right to left arc that we mentioned. Now, this might be something that you've heard before where on a kick serve, you toss more behind you so that you can kick it up. But again, with the kick serve even, we still want to get that long axis rotation and drive the racket forward into the shot so that we could still get considerable pace and spin on your shot. And the only way to do that is to get considerable depth in front of the court. But when it comes to the arc, we do want to toss it slightly more to the left side for righties. On the kick serve, you'll see pros making contact mostly over their head, if not slightly over. And this is great because now this is going to change the trajectory, not the orientation, but the trajectory of your racket head to be more upward and vertical as you hit the shot. So you can think of your kick serve as pretty much a flat serve with just a little more topspin. Not a completely spinny serve, because that's going to lead to just, a ball with a lot of topspin that your opponent can easily attack. Now, just like with the toss depth, I think it is easy to overstate how far to the left that you want to toss. Because you see, if you toss too far behind you, too far to the backhand side, now it's not going to allow you to lean your body and your upper body forward into the court enough, and that's going to lead to a very spinny shot, but one without a lot of pace and one that your opponent could easily attack. And by this point, you might react by trying to get even more racketed speed, but as long as the orientation and the trajectory of your racket is off, it doesn't matter how fast you try and swing, it's just gonna be really spinny and it's not gonna go anywhere. So instead, for the kick serve, the toss should only be a few inches behind the flat serve at contact. And instead of trying to, adjust your arc by a whole foot, instead, just try leaning forward on your kick serve and see where your contact is over your head again, and try and get your ball to that position, and you'll start to notice how much more topspin you can generate. Now, the exact height of the toss on the kick serve is going to vary from player to player. You'll see some players tossing a little bit lower, and this is because when you make contact with the flat serve compared to the kick will be slightly, maybe a couple of inches lower to get a little bit more of that upward vertical component in the shot. But either way, you should let the ball drop to a lower position so that your racket can intersect it with the upward and forward force. All right, so now that you have the perfect arc, and you have the depth going into the shot, and you have the perfect height, now we're gonna pair all of that with your perfect backswing position. And pairing a perfect toss with the perfect backswing timing, you're gonna be well on your way to mastering that serve and hitting with tremendous amounts of power. So what I've done here is I've whipped up a free backswing quiz that you could take to find out, based on your favorite type of player, your actual serving contact height and all these different things, your preferences, what exactly is the best backswing for you. So feel free to check out the first link in the description below and take our free quiz, and let me know in the comments below what you got. Until next time, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Go out and train hard.